asking us about a chi-squared test. So we can see here it's a chi-squared test and it's performed at 5% and 1% this time. So that just means that whenever we have our p-value or our critical value at the end, we're going to have two things to compare it to. So the first question is just to state the null or the alternative hypothesis. So the same as normal, when you're doing any sort of chi-squared test for independence, and we can see it's to test for independence up here, then the null hypothesis, H0, is always that the two items are independent. So in this case, it's the flavor of food or pet food and animal. So whether it's a dog or a cat are independent. So always independent for H0. And then for the alternate, which you can write as HA or H1, and it's exactly the same. In the exam, you would need to write it all out, are dependent. Okay, so dependent. Part B is then asking you to write down the degrees of freedom. So the degrees of freedom is the number of rows minus 1. So the number of rows here we have 1, 2, so 2 minus 1, times by the number of columns, we have 1, 2, 3. So 3 minus 1, and that gives me 2 times, or I should write that the other way around, 1 times 2, which is 2. And then for part C, it's asking us to find the p-value for the test. So for this one, we're going to go to our calculator and we're going to go to second function and matrix. We tab across here to edit, and you can see I've typed in here the data that was given to me in the question. So I've changed it to the size I need, 2 rows, 3 columns, and I can type my information in. We can now go to stats and tests, and then we're looking for the chi-squared test of independence. The observed matrix is A, that's where I just typed it into. This can be anything, be it's what it's preset to be, and that's fine. And then we can calculate. And you can see there that the p-value is 0.0297 to 3 significant figures. So if we go back to our paper, the p-value is equal to 0.0, we can just see it there on the right, 2973, and to 3 significant figures, that would be 2.97% or 0.0297. That's also okay to write. And then part D asks us to state the conclusion at, first of all, a 1% significance level. So if it's at 1%, then our p-value is 2.97%, which is bigger than 1%. And when the p-value is larger, we accept it, and therefore we accept H0. The second one there is at a 5% significance level, and 2.97% is less than 5. And when the p-value is too small, we reject it. So we reject the H0 and accept HA. And then the last question there is state which of the 2 significance levels that Jane uses. And her conclusion was that it was not independent. Okay, so not independent means that we have rejected H0. It's a bit of a funny wording there. So not independent means it is dependent, so it's rejecting H0. And if we look back, we can see which one rejected H0, and therefore Jane must have done the 5% significance level in order for it to be rejected. So in terms of the marks here, there would be 1 mark for the independent and dependent, the correct way round. There would be 1 mark for the significance level of 2. 2 marks for the p-value, one of those would be rounding. And then we accept the H0 and we reject the H0. So there's 1 mark with correct reasoning. So you would need to have some sort of reasoning there that would be correct for how we've answered it. It could also be the graph drawn out, so either would be fine. And then we have 1 mark there for recognizing the 5%.